No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Tara asked, and I think this is actually a really good question because, um, depending on the prospect, they all have kind of different mindsets of where they are and what they actually want to sit through. She said, what are some tips to keep the prospect engaged during the storytelling? How do you handle the quote unquote, yeah, 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 but interruptive folks?
So let's talk about a couple things. I think I would agree with you. That is a fantastic question. So we're trying to tell this story, and they're like, yeah, 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 but this. Um, I think two things have happened. Number one, we didn't establish well enough at the beginning of the call what the agenda was and what we were going to talk about. Because if all they want to do is jump to the end, if they're like, yeah, yeah, but what's the price? Then they're probably not an ideal customer or client for us. And B, we have to be really honest with ourselves. They've already commoditized us. They don't want to hear anything about our unique offer or our positioning or anything. And we haven't seeded that well enough in a discovery call, because the proposal call is not the first call that you have. It's not the first time you talk to them. And you might you might have such a good pipeline that you're putting together proposals off of maybe just email communications and stuff like that, but they should have a good enough relationship with you at this point. We should be establishing that we understand their pain points. And if we're going through slides and they're like, yeah, 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 but um, we're not talking about them. Like, they should be utterly captivated by this, because we're talking about them and their industry and what's going on. Like, all things that we've heard them say, we're kind of parroting back. Um, there's a good example of I'm trying to think. Somebody that we love in Blueprint, his name's Alex Hermosi, famous for like launching a bunch of gyms and stuff. But one of the things I learned from him is that the only thing you should be doing on sales calls is asking a question, sharing an anecdotal story, or repeating what you already heard. And if we're not doing those things, we're probably doing it wrong. So I think all of these things should still fall under that framework, right? We're repeating back things we've already heard, the pain points, the stuff they've already tried, et cetera. But if they're like, yeah, yeah, but, and they want to interrupt and interject, I don't know, think about what it's going to be like to work with that. I think this is an easy answer to be like, they're already interrupting you and over talking you in a proposal. They're going to be hard to work with. So you have to consider that. Like, that's going to be, they are asserting that will be the relationship going forward.
Yeah. The other thing I might want to add to that too, maybe just off cuff a little bit too, is, so my fiance, she works in corporate sales, and her proposals sometimes, man, they'll drag on for a couple of hours. And, I mean, they're very, very long and very deep. And I think there is a level of self-awareness too, right? I mean, if you are going through something and you're not reading the room and like seeing people glazing over or just not paying attention, like this is a Facebook Live, but like, Brendan was constantly asking questions to make sure people are engaged. So there's other things to, even if like, so if you're spending a lot of time on a slide and you can see people are glazing over, you're getting no response, you can just be like, are you guys with me? Does this make sense? Can I move forward? Just kind of continuously poke and check in, you know what I'm saying? Because there is a level of self-awareness that sometimes if we spend a lot of time on a presentation, we feel like people really want to sit through it, when that's not always the case. Sometimes people might already have the information and might want to move on to the next slide. So I think making it a little bit more engaging, not a one way, like to me, a proposal is not a presentation, it's a conversation. It is a back and forth where you're presenting them and you're looking for feedback, because, that might actually help you want to tell your pitch as you go through it, so I think everything Brendan said, and then plus a level of, well, is this presentation very boring? Are people falling asleep, and are they yeah me because I'm repeating myself and because they don't want to sit through this, so I think a little bit of both. Level of self-awareness always goes a very long way in circumstances like these though as well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It should absolutely be a conversation. And you can even figure out, the more you run proposals and everything, you'll figure out what the touch points are to keep people engaged. And like I said, you're repeating those same kind of, like I said, asking a question, repeating what you already heard, confirming that what you heard before was correct, right? Yeah. Last time we talked, you had mentioned one of the things you were trying, like, I see this across the whole industry, this, and this, is that accurate? And they'll be like, yeah, like just these like quick, small check-in points, I think are really great. And if you are monologuing, like what I'm doing today, it's a little meta, right? But if I was doing an actual proposal, I wouldn't have talked for 20 straight minutes. Like, you would never land that client. That's miserable, no matter how entertaining you are. Like I said, I was a teacher for 10 years. So I can monologue for a good 50 straight minutes, but it's not the best for teaching. Definitely not the best for proposals.
For sure. I want to open it up to any more questions too. And again, obviously, Brendan gave a great presentation. Appreciate that, Brendan. But if there's anything regarding sales proposals or just anything that you guys want to ask, we're both here for you. You could just go ahead and drop them in the Facebook channel. Make sure that that Brendan sees them. So just a question for me too, Brendan. This is something that, I actually talked to our salespeople at both companies today, Weber's the agency, and then also Blueprint with Alan today. I feel like something that we struggle with, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, but is being overly consultative at times too, right? This is especially when it comes to SEO, right? There is a certain level of, and depends on who you're pitching, right? If you're pitching dentists, it's not overly important to go into the details, but if you're pitching, larger companies that have an internal SEO, there's a certain level of chest beating, if you will, that has to go on to show that you're qualified to do the job, right? However, at the same time, that can get, as you said, too consultative and less kind of story driven, and kind of get off the point of, we're here to make you money at the end of the day. We're here to help you achieve your goal. Maybe it's not money, maybe it's whatever it may be, collecting payments online like Zora was or whatever Zora does. How do we make sure to like kind of keep these transactional towards the end, right? I mean, so where I was going with this, so I think something our agency needs to get better at from a sales point of view is that hard close, right? Blueprint's a little bit different. You get on a call with us, you're getting a pitch, and we're going to try and close you on that call because it's a different sales cycle, right? But again, agencies are longer sales cycle. There's other people involved. I got to run this by him. I got other proposals coming in. Do you have any tips for like really kind of giving that hard push towards the end of a call, or giving the hard push towards the end of a proposal? Like, how do we get them off the edge and get them to write that check?
Great question. I will say I'm definitely a work in progress when it comes to this. I had a proposal last week or the week before, and I got off the call and I'm like, we just spent the last like 15 minutes, me just like wanting to be helpful. And I got pulled into this old habit of just keep giving advice, let's look at that. Like just treating like I'd already closed them and we were like already doing the work. And it was like, that's not effective. Because like you said, as your contracts get bigger and bigger, and as your clients get bigger and bigger, in a lot of cases, depending on who your clients are, but like the clients I work with, I'm almost always working with like a demand gen manager, somebody who understands marketing. And in a lot of cases, like you said, somebody who understands SEO as well as I do. And I'm coming in actually as like I don't do traditional SEO. Here's my take on it, right? Again, like things that I've refined and worked on coaching in Blueprint around offer design and productization and positioning. I think to answer your question, like real concretely, you have to have a sales process that extends beyond just the proposal. Like you have to know what the next step is that you're pushing for, and understand what the CTA is at the end of that call. So if the end of the call, in the past, I found it worked really well, where the proposal then pushes into a statement of work call. A lot of times I've seen a lot of mistakes made when people try to smush them together, where the same proposal call, where I've walked through this long story, I've shown you, I understand you, I've given you here's like the main things we're going to work on if we work together. Then we have 5 minutes left until the top of the hour, and we're like, all right, let's talk about money. And it's like, nobody has the time. They end up just email it to me, and you lose that opportunity. So it might work better sometimes that at the end of a proposal, it's like, hey, the CTA is, let's schedule, I want to do an SOW review, a statement of work of exactly what this is going to look like over the next, however you structure your offer, whether that's 6-month, 12-month retainers or sprints, like what I do and what to a degree what you do at Weber's and stuff like that, the model that we think is really effective. I think understanding that the goal of the end of a proposal call might not be necessarily to close. You're kind of doing a pre-close and then get an idea of like how much their budget is. There's some tactical ways you can do that. Get straight to the money. Is like, we're going to charge money for this. Here's typically what our range is. Does that make sense for you? And we should have already pre-qualified whether that's in an opt-in form or something to even book the call. We should already know they have budget. But just again, reaffirming that. And then the next call is the statement of work, where we're talking, we're straight business.
Transactional.
Yeah.
So we got some more questions. James Johnson asked, do you use the hero's journey in case studies too? I think I remember you saying it in a YouTube video.
100%. Yeah. When I got started, I got really lucky. The first local SEO client was a really good friend. He was a wedding photographer. And we made him an extra $42,000 in 6 months. And that was like life-changing money for him. So from there, building that hero's journey case study was really effective. I think case studies have different ways to position it, different ways to use it, right? Do I need to do a hero's journey in a long form blog post? Yeah, I think it's really effective taking people through that journey of exactly all of that stuff and positioning yourself as the mentor, as the guide that helped them achieve it, so then they can see that, especially if you have a really good positioning. Like I work with, I don't know, like finance software companies. Cool, they need to be able to see that in the hero's journey of that case study. It works really well in conversations too. Like maybe your case studies are video and audio. So you're walking them through, the client through that case study, talking through these points that I just outlined with the hero's journey. I think it's really effective. Now, are you going to do that in like a LinkedIn post? Maybe an abbreviated version, but I think it's about time and place and medium for sure. But I think the hero's journey is tremendously effective. If you think about all of the tweet threads, the Twitter threads that go viral, and the even the LinkedIn posts that do really well, creating that open loop at the beginning of that kind of story, right? Like even Star Wars, right? This kid was a backwater moisture farmer who ended up becoming the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy. Interesting, right? Do you want to know how? Cool. Can you see yourself in that journey? Yeah, it's really cool to imagine that. So creating that open loop at the beginning, I think is really valuable. And that storytelling technique, I think, is pretty timeless.
Got another question from Narissa. She asked, using Zora as an example, it appears that if the deck is created well, you can template the deck and customize certain pages. However, you need to get the static pages right. Is this a true assumption, or do you see more customization is needed in every deck?
So that's a great example. So I got the Zora deck. I started following a guy named Andy Raskin, who's like a messaging and positioning expert for mostly like software companies and CEOs and stuff. And I think that, I mean, when I got started, I mean, Ryan, you know me, like when I got started, I just like copied everything I could find. I was just like, how did they lay it out? Cool. I'm going to make the arrows look the same. I'm going to take everything I can take and just parrot all of this that I don't even know if it's working. I don't know why it's working, but I'm getting started. So I'm just copying. And eventually you start to find like things make more sense. There's better ways to visualize the value. But in terms of like, do you have to be super custom with every deck? I think it depends on how well you're positioned with the clients that you work for. So if you like are an SEO agency and it's like, I work with anybody, then that's going to be a little harder. Those decks are going to take a lot longer to produce. But if you're like, if you're like me, like I work mostly with SaaS companies, they become a lot easier because I understand what's happening.
I think also, Narissa, to piggyback off that, Zora is a software company, right? I mean, the element of their services is they probably have onboarding and maybe some customization for enterprise clients, but there's probably not a lot of customization in their product. They just have a sales process because it sells better than just having people self-checkout. When it comes to the agency stuff, general rule of thumb, the larger the deal, the more custom work that needs to go into the proposal. I've done SEO work for the smallest of the startups, pre-revenue, no budget, nothing, all the way up to Universal Studios. Universal Studios I worked on as a part of a larger agency as a contractor. That proposal in itself probably took 3 months to put together. It was over 500 slides, pretty much built out the entire app and experience for them ahead of time. That's called spec work in the big agency world. The larger the contract, and that was a multi-year, multi-million dollar contract. So, there's a lot of work that goes into those in terms of scoping, because also too, I mean, when the contract is that size, the company, and this is just kind of like the nature of the market too. If somebody else, the spec work sucks, everyone talks shit about it while they're going through it as an agency, but it's like, well, if we don't do it, they're going to win the contract, right? So it's just kind of like the nature of the business. It's actually like one of the biggest complaints in big agency world is the amount of time it takes to go into proposals, and you're basically doing the work ahead of time before you even have any sort of, contract in place. So, it's something that just comes with experience. I think, your sales process is a process because it should always be evolving, right? In looking at if you're not closing deals, and going back and just asking for feedback, if you are in a situation where people are giving you no's, you can just ask why. Be like, hey, I appreciate that. Whatever you need, we're here for you. Would you mind if I ask why? Like, was it something that was something missing from our proposal? Was it another agency that had, something more appealing? Like what was missing from our proposal that, didn't connect with you? And a lot of times I'll tell you. And again, that's going to be open for opinion, just because you never know what else they're pitching against, which is one of the challenges of this game, is that it's not just about you. It's not just about them. There's also other people in the pot too that you have no visibility to. So general rule of thumb, for our proposals, it's tough because like 80% of the slides are templated in our proposal, but those 10 slides that we customize take a lot of time, like a good amount of time. We're doing research. It's all covered in our sales module too, exactly how we do it. And that's really honestly just kind of like a starting base point, as we move into larger contracts that are not just SEO scoped, we're putting even more time and effort into the customization of those. But again, the customization is not just coming off the wall, because we're not going to put something into a proposal that we probably haven't done before, right? So there's probably other slides that we can grab. Again, we're not just making stuff up. So kind of a long-winded answer, Narissa, that customization is needed. The more the more you customize and personalize proposals, the higher close rate it's going to have, right? But it also depends on the nature of what you're doing, as Brendan alluded to. If you're highly, highly specialized and you only do work with, attorneys, then for the most part, your strategy is probably gonna be the same every time. You just got to replace some screenshots. Client Boost was like a $10 million plus advertising agency. I don't know if they're still not doing custom proposals, but they used to send out a slide deck for everyone. And they were a general advertising agency, and they were starting at $5,000 a month for ad services. And they were literally just sending out a templated proposal over and over again. That's it. Because their kind of argument was, we're really good at what we do. Here's all the results. It doesn't really matter what you do, because at the end of the day, we're going to run ads and we're going to figure it out. That was kind of like their thing. So they really found a groove for that. And obviously they crush it. But again, it's kind of got to be something that you just take the temperature of, if you will. So we have,
go ahead,
Brian.
I just want to add real quick, a big piece of this too, is that we front load a lot of this, and we're talking about proposal design and everything, and like how to present it and whatever. So much of this is front loaded in your positioning and in your offer, spending a lot of time figuring out who you serve, what you do, what the offer is that's the best fit for them, not just trying to make them want what you do. When you front load all of that work, it's something like I coach people on every single week in Blueprint, is that offer design. And once that's done, these pieces are a lot easier. You don't have to customize every single slide, because you've already created an offer that's kind of irresistible to your ideal client.
Sure. More questions. We got a question from Ryan O'Neill. How much time per proposal are you spending on each client?
It's a good question. I've done proposals that I've spent maybe 45 minutes. It really depends on the client. I think, like you said, Ryan, sometimes when things are a little bit bigger and more long-term and the scope is a lot larger, you spend more time on it.
Yeah.
I've had plenty where I've spent 15 minutes and been surprised what a big contract it is and how easy it is to close. But I think, again, like that comes down to having the right positioning ahead of time. They already know that you're the perfect person. We've done a great discovery ahead of time. I don't think proposals have to be a huge time suck.
Yeah, I agree. Again, especially if your positioning is dialed in, if you've done the work before in the past, a lot of the times they're kind of like copy and paste jobs from other ones. Because again, especially for us with our sprints, like we're not really changing what we're doing ever. It's really just about making the prospect feel like we put in the time to personalize it to their specific needs, even though their needs are pretty much going to be the same as everyone else, because we're doing a technical sprint, we're doing a content sprint, we're doing a link sprint. Those are the three things that pretty much every site is going to be deficient in, no matter what. We just spend some extra time finding those specific areas. Again, we have this all in our top 10 analysis within the sales module. It's seamless. It works. Okay, so we have a question from Christian. Christian said, when discussing pricing and rates, specifically flat rate sprints, what is the best way to demolish the eventual question of, so wait, what's your hourly rate again?
So the way Ryan, you might tackle this differently. So I'd love to hear your take on it too. But the way I tackle it is I take a very like hard sale approach to it, of just like, look, if I'm able to 10x or 5x, give you a 10 or 5x ROI on what you invest with me, does it matter whether I work an hour or 10 hours? And a lot of times people will be like, yeah, I don't care. Right. I think that takes care of a lot of it. The person that wants to know what your hourly rate is again, like thinks you're a commodity. And there's some like really, like if they're smart, like you can navigate. The problem is they're going to end up making them feel stupid for asking that question, if you outsmart them. You have to be really careful how you handle this, right? Because if I'm like, look, like, then you're going to punish me for working extra, or punish me for all the years that I spent being able to do this work in 4 hours instead of 40, blah, 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 blah. I think that bringing it back to the ROI and bringing it back to the results and the performance is the best way. But you have to be really careful you don't shame them in the process.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we actually kind of ghosted on a product where they were about to pay our invoice, and there was some miscommunication in the contract with some verbiage, and it just kind of opened up a whole can of worms for how much of a pain in the ass this client would have been. But one of the can of worms that she opened up was all of a sudden she was like, excuse me, fly in my throat. Was your pricing all of a sudden doesn't make sense. What's your hourly rate? How do I know how much time you're putting into each one of like these line items? It was just a path that we didn't even want to go down, because like, well, we're not going to go back and re-explain all this stuff to you that we've already had the conversation with. Like, we don't work for you. We're not, our hourly rate is irrelevant to you. Like, why does it, like, if you want somebody you get to pay an hourly rate, go hire a contractor, go hire an employee. Like, that's not how we operate. We ideally live in the margins. And what I say by that is that like, you're basically paying us out of the money that we're making you, right? Because our pricing internally is built on hours, because that's our product, right? Our product is people's time. So we track that internally. We know how much our service costs to us as a business, but it doesn't matter for you, because what you're getting is somewhat of a mix between time and effort, and then value-based too. But I don't tell them it's all value-based, right? It's just the pricing is built to again, to live in that margin, right? To anchor that pricing against what the expected benefit of our work would be, right? So we, like, if they've been through the sales process with us, especially, and like they ask that question, or if they want to understand clarity on how we come to our pricing, that's fine. But again, like 99% of the time, if we've done our job during the sales process, that should never come up, because they should understand as we walk them through everything. And like, this concept of anchors is so important, right? Like, we're usually leading off with expected traffic growth, right? So we're anchoring again where they are now with what they can expect, and then we're we're like literally like forcing them to answer questions that will then take away these objections later on. So for example, when we're going through the traffic projection analysis, right? This is all in the blueprint training, by the way, and these things crush it. Is you run the traffic projection analysis for them, and then you run them through it, and you say, hey, look at, like, would you agree that these are among your most valuable and profitable keywords? Yes. Right there, they're giving you buying to reduce any of the fact that like the analysis doesn't work, because it's based on keywords. So you say, okay, this is where you currently are. Based on the analysis that we did, based on our past performance, we believe that we can increase by this much. So like, with this much more traffic per month times your conversion rate, you would be making X amount more in lead value, X amount more in e-commerce value, whatever the type of client that you're working with, right? That's an anchor. Once you have that anchor set, that's what we're pricing against. We're pricing against that expected growth. We're not necessarily pricing against, how much time it's going to take for us to do that, because then we get stuck in a position where 14 months from now, they're going to be like, hey, Ryan, what have you guys done? Like, you owe us 12 hours. Like, no, we're not attorneys on retainer. We're not like contractors. Like, we did the work, and you're experiencing the growth, and that's it. And that's the whole thing. So, it's very important that you just follow the process. And this is why Brendan said too, like, asking the right questions is so important, because you're not just getting information for yourself, but you're documenting, you're getting them to verbally state things that you can then again anchor against those statements too. So again, these questions, again, they're all within the sales module. We kind of break them all down for you, the questions that you need to ask, because you're getting them to verbalize, you're getting them to buy in to everything that you're showing them throughout the process. And then when it comes to pricing, right, they know what they're going to get. They know your case studies. They know your track record. They know that they should believe by that point that you are a good solution for that. The pricing then lives in that margin, right? So that's something I say all the time to people too, is especially with a lot of the deals that we're working out now with larger companies, they ask us about pricing, and I just say, we live in your margin. We're going to make you money. Like, our pricing really doesn't matter, because whatever we're charging you, it's going to be extremely cheap for how much money you're going to make from working with us, right? So again, always reframe that too. And just going back to Brent's initial presentation here too, Brent, that was a very articulate way of basically saying, showing them how they get to their goals, right? And just doing so in a more meaningful and story-driven way. But at the end of the day, like, we are here to solve a specific type of problem, and the entire proposal process is geared towards showing them that you can do that, and selling them on that point. So again, the expected result should be something that's either a very valuable pain point or painful pain point to them that's costing them money, or potentially has growth projections off of that you can then price against. So all these things, again, all pricing really should live, as I say, in the margin or in the pain that they're experiencing that you're going to help them fix.
I want to give everybody some language. If somebody's really pressing you on that, I like to simply acknowledge it. Hey, it seems like this is really important to you. And they'll be like, yeah, it is really important to me. Have you been burned on this in the past? Like, I know when I've been burned in the past, somebody has said they were going to do something and the quality wasn't great. And then I started to wonder how much time they really spent on it. And they'll be like, yeah. And then all of a sudden you start to uncover, you're empathizing, you're building rapport, you're hearing them, and it gives you a good chance to continue doubling down on your positioning around like, yeah, somebody did this and we got burned in the past again. Like, this is something I pull out in my discovery calls. Have you ever worked with an SEO agency in the past or a consultant? And you can start to get some of those negative experiences out and position against that during the sales process. But simply acknowledge it. Like, this seems really important to you, and then uncover why that is. And then you can move back exactly to how Ryan explained it.
So there's an interesting question here from Jonah. He says, as a freelancer who helps agencies implement the blueprint training, are there tips that I can use from the hero's journey when applying for gigs? I've got some thoughts on that, Brendan, but if you want me to go first, or you can go. It doesn't matter. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too. But Jonah, essentially the way that I see this is that, again, simplifying even more Brendan's framework, it's all about solving problems, right? It's all about understanding the problem that they're having. The framework that Brendan showed you is really a sales tool, right? That is a sales mechanism that is going to take your proposals and put them on steroids, because it's going to help them understand and communicate what it is, that the value that you're driving better, right? So it always goes back to the value that you're driving and the problem that you're solving. The problem that you're solving is, I mean, you tell me, right? You're helping agencies with overflow work. You are plugging into their system directly with systems and processes that you're both already aware of. You're saving them time, you're saving them money, you're saving them energy. These are all the things that you're doing for them, right? You're not just doing the SEO work for them. That's where the story comes in, right? It's understanding not just, hey, I'm going to do SEO work for you because I've been trained by the blueprint training and I see that you do that too. It's what is it that you're actually doing for them, right? And that's where the story framework comes into play. So the story framework, in my opinion, can be applied to anything, right? But it starts with understanding, again, what those core problems are and reading in between the lines, because something that I think is a powerful part of this, and that we don't talk about enough. We talked a little bit about how SEO is a very consultative approach, but people decide to buy based on emotion. It's not just being like, oh, okay, like he's going to drive us, he's going to make us more money, so of course we're going to go with him. Like, there's so many nuances to that decision, especially when they're getting pitched by other agencies who are probably saying the same thing. Like, the whole process that I gave you is what is like the bare minimum, right? That's like, you have to, if you can't show them the results that they're going to get from working with you, then you fold the business. It's not going to work. That's the bare minimum. But like, on top of that, it's understanding people, it's understanding emotions, it's understanding how to get people to like you, right? Because at the end of the day, people are going to do business with people that they like. And that's where the story framework comes into play, because what you're doing, as Brendan said, is it's not about you, it's about them. They're the hero and you want to edify them, right? We want to turn that spotlight back on them, that it's about their business, it's about their people. It's not about us and what we can do for them. So that's kind of my opinion on it, man. At the end of the day, when we boil this down, it's all about solving problems, and it's all about understanding the emotions that people go through during the buying cycle,
Yeah, I think that being able, again, like, you're just showing, like, I'm the mentor, I'm the guide, like, you're not the hero in the story. Help them understand how they are better, how they are the future version of themselves that they want to be, have the future version of the business that they want to have because of you. The more you can attach yourself to that versus being like, look how great I am, me, they'll be like, cool, you're awesome. And that's the end of the conversation. I think it's more of attaching to yourself to the results that they want, for sure.
100%.
It doesn't change.
Got a question from Boris. Boris says, I get uncomfortable when speaking about pricing. How do I get better at this? I'm an SEO by trade and not really a salesperson, but I feel like I have to wear both hats. This has been a huge challenge for me. What do you think, Brendan?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, this is one of those things where reps really matter. And sometimes it is just a question of talking to somebody. This is why Blueprint's so valuable in the coaching calls that we do, where it's just having somebody ask you, cool, how much does it cost? And then you're like, well, it's $2,500 a month. And it's like, reset. Say that to me again. Like, if the first time you're saying the words out loud, is when somebody asks you on a proposal call or a statement of work call or whatever, you've screwed up. Like simply, it's something we don't do. Like just say the words out loud, practice your proposal, run through a proposal, watch it, go on Zoom, make a free Zoom account, record yourself walking through the proposal, and then, or use QuickTime or whatever, record it back and watch it and be like, is that cringy? Did I nail it? And yeah, it's not a conversational approach because you're just recording yourself, but like walk through exactly how you explain your pricing and the money and all of that sort of stuff. But a lot of this is just going to come from reps. And then there's also training, right? Like training within Blueprint walks through, like, here's the common objections, here's how we do objection handling and all of these different things. Having that in your back pocket is really valuable.
Yeah,
because it's all about, it's confidence, right, Ryan? Like
100%. It's a muscle. You got to exercise it, like, and I think this is why the Blueprint is so valuable in the SEO industry, because I think you'd be in the majority, Boris, of people that are SEOs by trade and they're not salespeople or purebred entrepreneurs or business people, right? And these are muscles that you have to, like, if you want to build an agency, you got to be an entrepreneur. It's not about being an SEO, it's about building and running a business. So, a lot of us start this because we're like, hey, I can rank a website and people will pay me for this. So, but until you go through all these things and you either replace yourself or you learn how to do these things, and you don't really have a business, right? So just like anything, just like you weren't born knowing SEO. You might have gravitated towards it just because your personality type, but you weren't born knowing it. You got to learn it just like anything. So I think it just even deeper than that too, because it's not to be like, there are pure people that are more like me and Alan were actually talking about this in terms of like personalities. There are definitely personality types that are more lend better to a sales type role, right? Somebody who can be a little bit more dominant, a little bit more comfortable in asking uncomfortable things like, hey, give me your money, But I also think that you can double down on your personality type. That's not who I am. I can sell, but I'm not the type of person that's going to like talk you out of your pants and do that, So I think you lean on what you do best. And if that's being a really good SEO, then like sell them on you being the best SEO. You know what I'm saying? I mean, sell yourself, sell your skills, sell your results. And then just work on those uncomfortable things. I mean, it's a cliche, but like growth comes from putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. Like you're never going to grow as a person. You're never going to grow as an entrepreneur. You're never going to grow as a business if you don't put yourself in those uncomfortable positions and be okay failing, but picking yourself back up and doing it again, So sorry.
I know. Hey, Ryan, I know we're right here at the top of the hour and I don't want to go too far over time. Do you want to do one more question, or maybe I could hop into the Facebook group and answer some of the follow-up questions too?
No, let's do one more, because I do want to encourage people to show up for these in the future, and not do everything today. But one more question, and then I'll wrap it up. This comes from Jared. Actually, it's actually a good question. It's a pretty tough one. He says, I posted a client success story in my Facebook group, and a few people tried to hammer me on ROI and revenue. How do you guys present that when it's not connected to those? How do you connect those when it's not connected to revenue? Am I right on that, Jared?
Yeah, I read that too. Yeah. So first of all, like if it's in your Facebook group with like your ideal audience, if you're running a Facebook group that is filled with people who would hire you, if they're hammering you on ROI and revenue and you're trying to convince them it's not about that, you are doing the exact wrong thing. If your ideal clients are like, we want ROI and revenue, and you're like, well, it's not really about that, that's not correct. So hopefully that's not what we're talking about. I understand, like if you go on growthsprints.co, my consultancy, you'll see I talk a lot about traffic and links depending on what we're working on, but I also talk a lot about MQLs and SQLs and stuff. And like that is my main positioning, is all around sales and revenue. It has to be connected to that. At some point, we have to understand that SEO is performance marketing and we're there to make them money. So the more you can connect it to the money, I mean, my first case study I ever got, that photographer that I told you about a couple minutes ago, is I asked him, I was just like, how much money would you attribute to our work? And he's like, I'm up 42 grand compared to where I was last year. The only thing different is I'm working with you now. And I said, are you comfortable with me taking that number? And he said, of course, totally comfortable. And I said, great, that's our number, right? So you have to connect it to the money if you're going to sell the results.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, Jared, too, just reading between the lines a little bit more, I mean, we don't always have access to that information. a lot of times clients might not be okay with us having that, or especially reposting it. So look, if people are hammering you on it, just kind of like a micro step would be like, yo, like I'm not about to put my client's information out there. You know what I'm saying? Like clearly, like it's like, hey, if there's what is it? If there's lightning, then there's thunder. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. Like it's like if there's more traffic, then there's probably gonna be more revenue or leads or sales, right? So you can kind of like pull the bullshit card a little bit on that and just be like, hey, look at, like I can't put my client's revenue data out there, but they give me permission to give traffic. So that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? But like rest assured that they would back me up, that they're making more money. So like you're in my group and kiss my ass. I don't know.
That's very true though. That does happen a lot.
All the
Especially when you're
time,
working
all the
with
time.
bigger
I mean,
brands.
all the time. Actually, I've been working with some contractors that have been helping us out. Like even Alan, Alan's technically a contractor here, and he was asking if he could like use this case study. I'm like, of course, but like I'm not comfortable with you giving revenue data. Like I'm sorry, like I have competitors out there that like it's not really the story. Like I need to be, like me as a brand, I need to be in charge. If we're going to present that information, I need to be in charge of that conversation and how we do so. So, but like traffic all day, who cares? So that's kind of how I would frame it. That brings us to the end today. Brendan, first and foremost, appreciate your time as always. That was an awesome presentation. As we talked about many times through this, Brendan is the head coach over at the Blueprint Platinum. He's also one of the coaches in Blueprint Training. If you guys are not full members of Training or Platinum and you're interested, all you got to do is drop a comment, just say a little hands up, say I'm interested. And we'll send you a DM and we'll give you some more information on our programs. This is the type of stuff that we cover. It's not just about links and content and keywords. It's about growing your business because honestly, you can go get that information anywhere. But what we do the best here is systems frameworks from people who are experienced, who do this every day, who have been doing this for a decade, and really helping you unclog the problems with your agency at a one-to-one level. So we're here for you guys, whatever it is that you need. Just drop a comment in this little thread here and we'll get back to you. Again, Brendan, thank you for your time as always. Yep. If you want to have any parting words, and we'll wrap it up on that.
No parting words. I'm here to help everybody with kind of two things. Number one, make more money and be happy running your agency. I know a lot of people that run agencies that do the first thing really well to make a lot of money, but they're not happy. They don't have the life that they want. And I really do think that running an agency can definitely deliver that for you. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I was a teacher for 10 years and changed my life figuring these things out. So I'm always happy to share. Tag me, drop a comment below, and we'll follow up with you for sure.
Awesome. Appreciate it, brother. And we'll be in touch with everyone. Take care, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.